All right, howdy everybody. Let me get my stand here. So I want to first of all apologize. Oh my, always my hair on these things. That's weird, right? Because I normally don't pay attention to my hair all day, and then I sit here and I look at the playback, the feedback, whatever you call that, the monitor, and then I see what my hair looks like. I'm like, oh. Anyway, I am doing this early because I have a gig, and I thought instead of just like not doing it at all, I thought I would jump in here real quick and talk to you guys a little bit. I do have one question that came up that we can talk about, but if you have any questions that you want to ask right now, feel free. And so, right, this time of the year is usually the slowest time of the year for musicians. There's actually a friend of mine who I don't think he realized how maybe famous he thought he would be before he died. He's a guitar player, Tim Harris. I used to play in a band with him. It was the first. The way I've said this always is it was the first highly professional band I ever worked with, and that's not meant to be a insult to the other bands I worked with up to that point, but this band was in a different category from every band I had ever played with. It was called Salsa America, and all the guys in the band were top pros, and we did. And you know what happens, when you take a combination of taking top pros and playing great charts, and then put on top of the band a great leader and a great front man, those two don't have to be the same person, but if you have both of those at the same time, all of that at the same time, that's a great band. And something like that, it doesn't even matter how famous the people were. That's a great band. That's one of those things you look back at the rest of your life and you say, wow, I'm so fortunate that I did that. Anyway, so the guitar player for that band for a while was a guy named Tim Harris. And the reason I'm telling you about this is that he used to do a cartoon for the Musicians Union, and just in pencil. It wasn't colored or anything like that. And he had one cartoon where it was just called the Musicians Calendar or Musicians Income, and it showed the whole year. And it would be like climbing to December, right? And then, bam, January, nothing, right? Talking about the income for that year. And that's how it is. It's like that all the time. At least here in Houston, we make the most of our money in December, and then the first 2 weeks of January, almost never a gig. All right, so how can I get rid of air in my tone quickly? Use less pressure. That's usually the biggest thing that produces air in the tone, is to have pressure. That's not always what it is. You can also put, so it really depends on what it is that's causing the air in the first place, right? So if you have real leathery lips, it will make air in the tone. So when I say use less pressure, I'm assuming that you don't have really leathery lips. You don't have really chapped lips, okay? So if you are, um, if you don't fit that category, because what happens when you have airy tone is that the vibration of the lips. Okay, so you know what? I have to be careful when I say stuff like this because I've been finding out as I get older that the stuff I was told when I was younger was not as true as and things that we were told that now they have more science and with the internet, we can find stuff out quicker and more, you know, more completely, more thoroughly. So I'm going to share with you what I was told is that not 100% of your lip surface is vibrating. That's where the air comes from. Okay? If not 100% of your lip surface is vibrating, then you're going to have air. Now, if you use too much pressure, then that creates a sort of like temporary version of that, right? But if you have chapped lips or really leathery lips, then that's more of a long-term thing. Okay, so yeah, that's really what I see there. Now you got to remember that there's not one size fits all for any of this stuff. Okay, so, how do you get it all to vibrate? That's what long tones are for. You can, you can take uh, lip products like lip balm. It's safe to say lip balm instead of like some of the other, like not Blistex. Okay, Blistex actually. Well, but then even that, Blistex is a brand. It used to be when I was in school, Blistex only had one product, and you could say don't use Blistex. Now Blistex has all kinds of products, and you can use some of them if it's. That's why I say if it's listed as a lip balm, that can help get more of that to vibrate. Okay. Now I had a friend of mine. Hello, Anthony. Nice to see you. Well, good practicing. I hope it goes well for you. um, Thanks for coming by. So, so if you put lip stuff on your lips to soften it, something that has either beeswax or shea butter oil or stuff, shea butter. I'm sorry, butter oil. Um, if you put stuff like that and keep it on, it should hydrate the chops. Okay. Now, it is also possible, but your question was very specific. It is also very possible that your lips could be too curled in. What does that have to do with it, right? If you curl your lips too far in, the skin part instead of the mucous membrane is what's trying to vibrate. Okay. So, I had the privilege of studying, not lessons, but in a chamber music context with a famous horn player, Francis Orville. He's Belgiumese. And he taught us about this French horn technique. And I'm not telling you to do this, but it demonstrates what I'm talking about. They have this technique for embouchure that they call Einsetzen. I think that's how it's said. That's obviously German. And what they do, hello, Richard. I'm fine. How are you? What they do is they set it on top of the lip and then roll the bottom lip out. Now, I'm not telling you to do that, but I'm using it as a demonstration because when you play with that embouchure, you're getting the softest tissue to vibrate. and that's always going to give you the warmest, least airy sound. If and in contrast, if you have one of those embouchures, let's say the nail is the mucous membrane, and the finger is the actual skin. If you curl in so much that the skin is starting to vibrate, right? Then it might cause you to have more of an airy sound. Now, there's also one more thing that can cause an airy sound is if you have overdone it. If you is there a way I could listen to you and give feedback? Yeah, so there's always a way to do that. Just upload a video to your channel, and if you don't want it to be public, don't put it to public, okay? And you can set it to unlisted. Don't make it private because then I can't see it. Set it to unlisted. Send me the URL. Best to do that through my website, eddielewis.com. Osvaldo, good to see you. I hope everything's going well for you. Tell me someday, maybe not here, but in an email, how your college stuff is going. I was thinking about you the other day. I've been wearing your shirt. That's why I was thinking about you. Last year, Osvaldo gave me a very, very nice shirt for Christmas. And I've been wearing it lately, and I was thinking about you. So thank you again. So yes, if you want to share some files with me, you can do that. And I actually like checking people out, musically speaking. All right. All right. So I do have to cut this one short, okay? So because I do have a gig tonight. Any other questions? This other question that I was going to answer is not officially a question to me, so I don't need to actually answer it today. What's one way to ensure I get a full sound in the upper register? So, upper register is sort of a different deal because what we're talking about there is a lot more than just something you can do quickly. And that's what I was saying earlier, and I kind of got distracted. You were very specific when you said, how can I get rid of air in my tone quickly? I didn't give you the overall answer that says this is how you get rid of air in your sound. I was answering that specific question about how you do it quickly. That's what I do. If I have air in my tone, I back off on the pressure a little bit and the tone cleans up. Okay? Or if I have chapped lips, I will put stuff in it and really baby the chops until that tissue becomes very soft. Okay? So, but if you're going to add to that, how do I get a full sound in the upper register quickly? Now, I'm not saying that's what you're saying, but that's not a thing. You can't do that. That's something that happens over time. I saw today a video, and that guy said that long tones were really not useful. What are my thoughts on long tones? Is it a useful exercise or a waste of time? Well, you know what? I like the concept of the right tool for the right job, right? Now, there's different kinds of long tones. If you look at my books, I abandoned certain types of long tones many years ago. So I almost have to agree in the sentiment here, because there was a time, I was in college at the time, when I was practicing too many long tones, too many lip slurs. And they weren't helping. They were actually part of what contributed to me crashing and burning. Okay? So what we consider traditional long tones can be bad for you. That said, there are times when I tell my students to do traditional long tones. It's just not something I have them do regularly. So let me clarify here. Traditional long tones are pretty much static, where you play, it might not necessarily be one note for that whole time, but that is a long tone too, and that is a traditional long tone. But maybe you have like G, E, C, right? And that might be your long tone study. Okay. When we talk about traditional long tones, those are probably not such a good thing to do on a regular basis, according to my, like, I have to assume that people who are talking to me know at least a little bit about what I teach. Okay. So in my system, those kind of long tones, there's no use for them. The long tones that are in my books are inspired by and influenced by the Chickwitz exercise. So they really are not long tones. They're just really slow flow studies. I call them long tones. Okay. Um, to me, when I'm doing what we call it, the Chickwitz study, when I'm doing that, I consider that a replacement for the long tones. And that's not a bad thing in my system. But now, what is the example that I give when I tell some students to do some long tones? If they've overdone it, I'll give them long tone studies out of the Schlossberg book, the ones that go, because if you play the Schlossberg, and I don't remember what page it's on, but you take a nice full breath and you play pianissimo. Then you take it off your lips and you do the next one down half steps. Now, technically, that's one of those old-fashioned long tones. Okay? But if you do that particular exercise after you've abused your lips, yeah, I'm not going to say that it heals the lips. I'm not going to say that. I don't think that's what happens. I think what it does is it forces you to figure out how to play on a bruised, damaged lip. Okay? So, and in a way, you could say that that's also something that could help if AC is still here. That's also something that can help with. So let's say hypothetically, the reason why you have airy sound is because you've overdone it. This exercise can help you get that good sound back. But generally speaking, the traditional long tones, I don't have any use for them. Same thing, by the way, for traditional lip slurs. If you look at my book, I've pretty much turned my back. And you know what I do every once in a while, just to make sure that I'm right about this, is I'll pull out the old lip slur books and just play through them. And I can still play through them. So that's evidence to me that I don't need to be doing them, that my lip slurs and my books are fine. That's all I got to do. Okay, so yeah, I would much rather do my lip slurs, which happen in less than 5 minutes. 5 minutes a day. You're welcome, Richard. Okay, Osvaldo says, any good breathing exercises I could do to get a fuller sound when in upper register? So do you recommend any mouthpieces for mariachi? Yeah, you know what? I have a new student, and I'm not going to say who it is yet because I don't know him well enough, but he's a mariachi player, and he's playing on a Parduba double cup, and that makes sense to me because you want to have in mariachi, you want to have a nice big sound, but you want to have some edge on that too. And the double cup makes a lot of sense for that. So that's Parduba. I think it's Parduba. For a long time they weren't being made. I think they're making them again. If I understand that is correct, I don't know. Um, as far as breathing exercises for the fuller sound in the upper register, I'm going to say the same thing as what I said to AC. AC, that's not something. I don't believe upper register works like that. My whole thing for upper register has always been since the 90s, or even before that, but I've confirmed it in the 90s when I got my chops. Is that familiarity is the only way to get good high chops. So you spend your time playing. That's why my books are set up the way they are. Right? If you do lip slurs that only do this, this goes along with what I was saying about the lip slurs. If that's what your lip slurs do, then you're not getting. Now, I'm not saying that that it's not possible to get. Maybe lip slurs is not a good example because there are some really, really high lip slurs. I don't think I don't like them because it's almost like playing scales. It's not really what am I saying? Well, scales is a better example. If you play just the F scale and your range only goes up to high C, then you're not getting those notes above F. Okay? That's why with my book, you're doing the tonalization studies. Let's say your range goes up to C, you're going to play all the way up to C. Right? You're going to be doing that. And if you do the whole tonalization stuff, you're going to do that 20 times. So I'm not so concerned about breathing for a fuller sound up there. You have my tonalization studies, right? You take your tonalization studies to your top note, and it makes you more familiar with those notes. That's how you get a great sound in the upper register, is to become more familiar with those notes. It's not a physical thing, it's a mental thing. Okay? Jordan asks, what's your view on the Crusoe method? Well, I've talked about that before on the question and answer thing before. A lot of what I teach is, I didn't know this. A lot of what I teach is similar. I'm not going to say, you gotta, let me tell you what my view is on the Crusoe method. It's extremely valuable, but some of the people who teach this Crusoe method, who study with him, are zealots. And if you open your mouth about his method, they will come and roast you. Right? So if I have any apprehension towards speaking about the Crusoe method, it's because I don't want to invite that kind of negativity on my channel. Okay, but I can tell you that I've found over the years that what I like, for example, with the range stuff, right? This familiarity concept is not that far off from what Crusoe taught. Now, I didn't get it from Crusoe. Part of it was stuff I figured out myself. But the Crusoe, if you want to learn Caruso. I'm not saying don't get the Caruso book. Of course, get the Caruso book. Yeah, and there's Caruso forums all over the internet. You can read that stuff. But my biggest recommendation, and I think it's out of print now, but the Bob Finley on trumpet is also a Caruso method. I didn't know that. Now, he had influenced me and my teaching a lot when I got that book. And I actually reached out to him and told him how much of an influence that book was. And he told me that Caruso would now be smiling to hear that. And I thought, wow, I had no clue that his approach was Caruso. So, but it makes sense because a lot of the stuff he's talking about this same kind of familiarity. So what do I mean by familiarity? I'm talking about that your lips, the changes that we make to play high. It's hard enough to do it on the low side, but on the high side, it's exponentially difficult to go from one note to the next. Just to look at what happens there, it's not something you can do with your conscious mind. It's something that must happen with your subconscious mind. And the only way to tap into that, this is my interpretation of it, right? The only way to tap into that is with familiarity, spending more and more and more time doing it. And that's what Caruso, and I'm not telling you that this is what Caruso said. This is my own anecdotal observation of how this works. Okay? All the exercises and the techniques that you see in Caruso is about that very thing. It's about finding exactly that perfect position for the lips, perfect position, perfect amount of pressure to connect, all of that stuff, the perfect amount in ways that your conscious mind could not possibly figure out. That to me is what I take from the Caruso thing. Okay? And as a method to learn, I would warn anybody to not to learn a method like that straight from a book. Okay? I don't think the Caruso thing, for that matter, not any method. I don't think any method works without that. By the way, that's one of the reasons why I do these question and answers. I have all those materials out there. Literally, if someone said, how many books have you written? I would say dozens of books, and I wouldn't be exaggerating. All you need for dozens is 24 or more, right? Dozens of books. I've written more than 24. Okay? And some of them deal with this exact thing that we're talking about with the familiarity. Some of them, that's all they are about, is familiarity. In fact, I'm writing a book right now about how to prepare a piece of music. I'm shooting to have it done before the Allstate Jazz Music for Texas is released, because I would like to get some students, I hope, here in Texas to use my book, my method, for learning a piece of music, and see how well that works for them. I've been using it with my students for years. The students that I have that have made Allstate, this was a big part of the reason why they made Allstate. The weird thing about it is I don't have a name for the book yet. It basically outlines 7 stages. I think Osvaldo knows about this. There are 7 stages of like practice techniques that you apply. And when you get to the 7th stage, you are an expert on that music. Unless you are careless in the process, right? If you let stuff slide that's not good enough, that's not going to fly. And I just, I was writing the other day one of the last chapters. I'm almost done writing there's a lot of work that goes in after the book is written, editing and checking spelling and checking, make sure the flow is all right and make sure that things are easy to understand and stuff like that. So I'm not in that stage yet. I'm still actually finishing up the actual content. But that said, so I was writing one of the last parts a couple days ago, and I realized that while I was writing it, how important your daily routine is. Oh, and because I was talking about this familiarity stuff, that's why. So I have this whole section where I talk about this familiarity, but in the context of learning a piece. Okay? So the whole point of these 7 stages is to make you awesomely familiar with the music, so much so that you play as well as someone that's like a professional player. That's the point of this book. So the whole idea is to get to where when you go on stage, you're going to use your subconscious mind. Your subconscious mind is far more powerful than your conscious mind. Let that sink in, right? Your subconscious mind is much more powerful than your conscious mind. So when you don't do a good routine, if you are sloppy in your scales, if you're sloppy in your lip slurs, if you're sloppy with your articulation in your daily routine, or even worse, if you don't do a daily routine at all, then when you get to that point on stage when your subconscious starts to kick in, it doesn't matter how many stages you apply, you're still going to sound awful. Because what you put in your subconscious is awful. Okay? Is pitch more important than range? Well, pitch is ultimately important. So yes, I would have to say pitch is more important than range, but I guess it depends on what it is you're talking about. So the ability to play in tune is more important than anything else that you can do. And here's one of the reasons why. This is something I learned from my second to last teacher, is that pitch is also a very important factor in your sound. That's right, Jordan. What you put in your mind is what comes back out. So that's what we were talking about. If you don't do a daily routine, you don't have anything in there. Sort of like going to get credit, right? And they say, get to buy a car, and they say, you don't have any credit. You didn't put anything in there. You think you should always have good sound in mind. You know it when it sounds like crap. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So yes, I would say pitch is more important. Pitch is one of those ultimate importance things. Okay? We don't want to ever play out of tune. It's never okay to play out of tune unless it's on purpose. And that's something we won't cover here right now. All right? So any other questions? Because I didn't have time, I wasn't able to advertise this at all today. So it's nice to see you guys on here. When I just pop in, maybe I won't put as much effort into advertising it next time, because that does take me seriously. Before I do the chat, I post it on the 2 websites, and I post it on Facebook. Sometimes I'll put it on LinkedIn, and that takes me at least an hour, sometimes as much as 2 hours to get that done. So if you guys are going to be here and I'm not doing that, then I might not actually do that anymore. So how to get better tone? So that's what I was saying. Well, okay, so that's a different question, really, because the other person was asking about airy sound. Better tone quality is a conceptual thing. A lot of people think it's a physical thing. It's not a physical thing. It's a conceptual thing. It manifests itself physically, but it's a conceptual thing. You can't play with a good sound if you don't have a concept of a good sound. So the most important thing to get a good sound is to listen to great trumpet players. And you know what I tell people? Don't put me on that list. Now, if you're here in the lesson and we play back and forth, that part of that is so that you can hear a great player. But that's because when you're in the presence of another trumpet player, that's actually more valuable listening than listening to a recording, right? So when you're in my lesson, I'm going to play for you for that purpose, so that you hear what a professional trumpet player sounds like. But if you're going to be listening to recordings, then you shouldn't be wasting your time listening to me, my recordings, for your own educational purposes, okay? And I'm not being humble here. I'm taking your interest at heart. Does that make sense? There's a whole bunch of trumpet players on just even YouTube that have marvelous sounds. Now, the exception would be if you love my sound and you would like to have that sound and you're not trying to be an orchestra player, right? If you want to be an orchestra player, don't follow my sound, okay? Now, I hope that makes sense. So the most important thing you can do for sound, number one, is listen at least, I'm going to say 5 to 8 hours a week. An hour per day. Listen to great, high quality, great sound trumpet players. Now so if I'm telling you, let's just be clear here. If I'm telling you that I don't fit that description, then that also means you shouldn't be listening to a bunch of those other guys on YouTube too. That's why I have on my website, I've posted it here a few times before. Let me post it again. I have a recommended listening list. There are you can get from YouTube. And it's there on my website for my students. I'll put a link. I'm pulling it up now. I'll put a link so that you can go straight to it. Listen to these guys on this page. I just posted it on the chat. Listen to the guys on this page 5 to 8 hours a week. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing is you want to make sure that you're doing the rest as long as you play stuff. And so I also have a video on the 3 levels of rests. So this is something that also contributes to your sound. These are 2 things that you can do right now that take very little effort. Hopefully you don't think that it's a lot of effort to listen to music, right? And the resting is also the only effort it takes to rest. Let me look it up real quick. The only effort it takes to rest is getting over that desire of having the horn in your hands, thinking thinking you have to like be doing something all the time to be better. So here's a link to the video about the 3 levels of rest. Okay? Those are the first 2 steps. Then you want to make sure you're doing a good routine on a regular basis. That's another thing that will help you get a better tone. Best range building exercises. I don't do range building exercises. Haha. My range didn't go up until after I quit doing range exercises. I believe in range familiarity. Let me find a video on that. I have a video on that somewhere. Let me see here. Or maybe not. Why would it not come up here? Oh, do you know what it is? I think it's in my... I think I talk about that stuff in my books, the videos that talk about my books. And I wouldn't know. So here's a link. This is a link to a oh, do you know what? That's what it is. All right, let me do this. It's the Run Range book. I I don't know why I didn't think about it the first time. Okay. I talk about this in my book, the One Range book. And the One Range book talks about, yeah, the jazz one I haven't finished yet. Sorry about that, Richard. I I actually put that together a long time ago and never followed up on it. So because the jazz thing is a lot more complicated because there's so many different wonderful, great trumpet players. So yeah, that's something I'm gonna have to get back on. So yes, the One Range video talks about this concept of building your range with familiarity. That's so. So yeah, the One Range thing I think is my. And now let me give you a rundown of what the One Range book is about. The One Range book talks about what we just said. We talked about having a good routine. Now here's another thing that's in that book is I talk about the 50% rule. 50% of your practice time should be music, not exercises. At least 50%. When I'm practicing, it's more like 25% of my practice time. Sometimes 20% of my practice time is exercises. Okay? So I talk about that. But then we talk about in the second half of the book is how to go up to your top range with all the different stuff you have to do, but don't pass it. We want to use the range you have. It's a use it or lose it concept for range development. Use the range you have, but don't go past that. Because what happens when you go past the range that you have is you start doing stuff differently, and that's when your tone in the upper register starts to sound different from the tone in the lower register. We don't want that. Okay? So that's why my approach is the way it is. It's the whole idea is to develop your range in a way that doesn't sacrifice your musical qualities, and that's really what the One Range book is about. The Chops Express book also has a section in the beginning of the book that talks about this in a very more abbreviated way, talking about which one of those routines to do on which day. Behind me, I'm saying, see where I'm pointing right here? That's actually a chart that I made. I leave it out for my students. So depending on where you are in your, okay, so it's going to be backwards because it's a webcam. Sorry about that. I'll explain it to you. I leave this out so that as a constant reminder to my students what the alternation should be. Say, I don't believe in practicing the same range every day. Some days should be limited range. Okay? 2 days a week, we go to our top range. And, you know, for those people who are like more of a, oh, sorry about that, more of a, what my friend calls a meathead mentality towards high notes, an overly physical mentality towards high notes. People like that can't wrap their head around how something like this can help somebody play high. They can't wrap their head around that. Because what you're actually doing is playing high even less. You're spending less and less time playing high, and yet your range goes up and up and up and up. To them, they can't fathom that. And the reason why is they think that high notes are physical. They think that the way you get high notes is the same way you lift. So let's say you can bench press 100 pounds. Well, to get 200 pounds, you just do that, but hard. You know, you get the same muscles, but you're going to do it harder now. That's not how range works. Range is not like athletics. You don't get there by being stronger. There is a strength aspect, and that's where it gets a little bit confusing, because you do have to have the lip. But if you look, and I haven't finished this video yet, I've been talking about it for months. If you look at how much strength it takes, I'm doing that backwards. If you look at, well, no. If the graph that it would take, what am I saying? If you were to graph the effort, the physical effort it takes to play high, it would look like something like this. So, in other words, once you get to a certain point, it kind of stabilizes. You don't need, so what am I saying? You don't need any more lip strength to play super C than you do to play the E above high C. You don't need more lip strength to do that. Now, if you can't play high C yet, then yes, you're going to need to learn to work on some lip strength. But here's the thing. The familiarity is harder to get than the lip strength. Let that sink in. The familiarity with those notes takes longer to develop than it does to develop the lip strength to play those notes. So if you focus instead on familiarity, you're getting the lip strength, but you're also getting that vital aspect of being more familiar with those notes. Okay? So no, I don't do, as a final answer to that, I don't do range exercises, because the whole nature of range exercises are these are notes that you can't play yet. If you're doing range exercises, you're playing notes you can't play yet, and you're doing something different to get them. And it's going to create a separation in your range. You're not going to have that same beautiful sound you have in the lower register up in the top register. Okay. Anyway, if there are any more questions, please ask quickly, because I do have to get going. Jazz gig today. And I've got some stuff I have to do before I leave. So, all right. So Gonna count down 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, I'm out of here, everybody. So thanks for hanging out with me. Oh, which there we go. Which book would you recommend first? If you don't have the One Range book, I would go with that first. The One Range book really ties all this. If you're talking about, I have so many different kinds of books. Okay, if you're talking about the chops, then the One Range book explains which book should be next. Okay, the One Range book will help you figure out what else to do. Or not, and it's written in a way that you don't actually have to use my other books anyway. You can just apply what you learn in the One Range book to the other stuff that you're already practicing. Okay, so that would be, if anyone asks me now from now on, that's what I'm saying. The One Range book has only been out a few months, and we've been selling copies. More copies of that book lately than any of the other books. So that's encouraging. All right. Because it really is. There's no exercise. Let me warn you, though, there's no exercises in that book. It's all text. It's basically like me just sitting here telling you how all this stuff goes. Okay? So, but it's thorough. It tells you everything you need to do. All right? And it is on ebooks too. So if you go to the EddieLewis.com, either the book page or the front page, if you want to get the ebook, you can get the ebook too. All right. Good night, everybody. We'll see you next time. God bless you.